Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. My name is Stephanie Reyes, and I'll be monitoring this session today. I am glad to welcome Kerri Rittschof from Arizona State University as they present their session today, Motivational Interviewing for Leaders, Building Engagement Through Better Conversations. Now, before we get started, I'll go over a few logistical items. This session is being recorded. Please use the Q&A feature for any presentation questions. You can choose to do this anonymously. There will be 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And please use the chat for any general comments or technical issues. Beth will be monitoring the chat for any questions and comments. They'll also be adding some links into the chat. One is for a collaborative resource sharing if you think of related readings, podcasts, videos, or something else, please share it with us in the comms resource Zotero or in the chat. One of our volunteers will drop this information in the chat. The last few links that we'll be sharing is just to reiterate our conference code of conduct. And now I turn things over to our presenter.
Awesome. I'm going to get ready to share my screen. There we go. All right, I think we are good to go. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with us this morning or this afternoon, wherever we are in the world. I am the director of the Unit for Data Science and Analytics at Arizona State University, our library. I am Kerri Rittschof. Please call me Kerri when questions do come up. And my goal or my role at Arizona State University is to connect research, training, and mentorship to real-world data challenges. A little bit about myself. I am trained as an organizational psychologist. I teach at Grand Canyon University as well, and I serve as an expert witness in child abuse and neglect cases because I worked in child welfare for over 19 years. At the core of my work does combine behavioral science and data to improve systems and leadership outcomes. So the purpose of today's session is to explore how the principles of motivational interviewing, or MI, can help us as leaders foster motivation, resolve resistance, and create stronger team alignment. So here is how we are going to spend our time today together. I also want to note we do have a couple of activities throughout this session, and I promise you they're not too bad. I promise, because we're going to dive in right into the very first one. It is a poll everywhere. So I want you, first of all, to think of someone who makes you feel truly seen, understood, and accepted. Don't need to say who they are, just think of that person. Now, what did they do or did do that helps you feel this way? Next, scan that QR code, or if you don't have your phone next to you, the link has been dropped into the chat. And I want you to answer this in one word, or if it's more than one word of what they did or do, separate it by dashes or underscore because it is a word cloud. I'm going to give a couple of seconds or so for you to access the poll everywhere. It may ask you your name. You can put XYZ or just bypass it. It'll probably let you do either. And now that you have it, I'm hoping everyone was able to scan it really quick because I have to jump to another screen really quick. Awesome. Look at this. Look at. Listen is like bolded right there. Acceptance without judgment, acknowledgement. They're being genuine. They understand. Amazing. Okay, it looks like we're slowing down a little bit. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. And see, it did not populate to this screen like it was supposed to. So I had to go a little old school. But I want you to notice what you wrote and what you saw other people putting in. The words were listen, understand. And that is what empathy is where we're experiencing the feelings of someone else, understanding them from their perspective. And I want you to remember this word and how you feel when someone is truly there for you throughout our time together today. And why does this matter in leadership? Why does empathy, being heard and understood, matter as we are in leadership or aspiring leaders? It's because when we have individuals like our teams that are internally driven, they tend to be more productive, collaborative, and adaptive. They don't just complete tasks, they care about what they're doing. Especially in the fast-moving or high-pressure environments that many of us work in, motivation is what keeps people engaged and wanting to push forward. So this is where motivational interviewing, or MI, comes in. It's a powerful way to tap into what really drives each team member and helps them reconnect with their why behind the work. Why are we doing this in the first place? And a couple of examples, it does drive productivity and efficiency. I stated this before, but I want to say it again. When people feel motivated, we don't have to be over them. They come to meetings prepared. They proactively want to solve problems, and they often go above of what is expected of them. Also, it boosts engagement and morale. Teams that feel connected and motivated are less likely to experience burnout or slowly disengage. It also aligns with their personal and organizational goals. We do our best work when we feel understood and when our contributions matter. It also improves adaptability to change. Let's face it, nothing always goes 100% to plan, but motivated team members are more likely to stay flexible and focus on solutions, not just the problems. They are also more likely to provide feedback or change as opportunities for growth instead of setbacks. And lastly, it increases quality and ownership. Motivation creates that intrinsic investment. We want to take pride in our work, and we want to feel personally responsible for the outcomes that we are putting forth. So, what is motivational interviewing? I've mentioned it a couple plus times now. It is really a style or a way of being with individuals, as well as a set of specific skills that are used to convey empathy and encourage others. Motivational interviewing was originally designed to help people with addiction to change unhealthy behaviors, but it is broadened to include behavior change associated with taking our medications, dietary changes to help us quit smoking, as well as to increase our physical activity, but it is definitely broadened into our organizational behaviors as well. Motivational interviewing was built on the work of Carl Rogers, a client-centered therapist from the early 1950s. And there was three aspects or spirits of motivational interviewing, and that's collaboration, evocation, and autonomy for support. Collaboration suggests that you are seen as a partner. We're working with others to understand their goals, their motivators, and any ambivalence to changes that might be going on. Evocation is where we're drawing out, pulling out someone else's thoughts, their ideas regarding their goals and different methodologies. It builds on their why, their motivation, what's important to them. And lastly, autonomy support. This is an intentional practice of respecting and strengthening someone's sense of choice, ownership, and self-direction in a process. Rather than directing or persuading or controlling behavior, we support them in identifying their own motivations, values, and solutions, while emphasizing that decisions ultimately belong to them. And I want to share a brief story with you all. Not too long ago, maybe a little longer than I want to admit, but not too long ago, I got down to my goal weight. I was feeling good. I was proud of myself for all the work that I put in, but I noticed I didn't have that lean muscle, with that nice definition in the arms as I wanted. But lo and behold, my sister, my younger sister, absolutely gorgeous. She had this beautiful muscles. And she has twins, and she's still, I mean, I know that doesn't matter, but it was just like, she was gorgeous. I wanted, what are you doing, sissy? What are you doing? We have, the same parents. She's a little bit taller, but same build. So I asked her, what are you doing? I got to my goal weight. I want that defined uh, definition that you have, that lean muscle. I work out so many days a week. I'm eating right, et cetera, et cetera. Well, she started telling me what she was doing. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do it. But then in the next breath, without malice, I know she started telling me what to do, when to do it. Don't do this, Kerri. You need to do that. And all of a sudden, I stepped back and I stopped listening. I put on earmuffs and blinders because I lost my why, my value in what my goals were, because now I'm being told what to do, even though I was fully motivated before. So that's just something to think about. I'm going to bring this story up again, but have you just answer to yourself, have you experienced something like this? Whether it is personal or professional? Probably. We all have in some way. So I'm asking you for a favor and allowing me to invite myself in. I'm not going to see it, nobody else is either, but I want you to write down, let's be old school, and write down why you are a leader, whether we have an official title or not, or why do you want to be? What is your why? Just write a couple words down. I'm a huge fan of write it down, make it happen, help us understand. And now that you have your why, have another question for you. Just based on what I've shared thus far, what are some ways that using motivational interviewing can improve relationships with your team and peers? What is your current understanding? Bringing it back to that portion of the why. And we're going to come back and revisit this, where you're going to add to this piece of paper, sticky note, index card, whatever you may be jotting things down on. And if you're still writing, please do. But I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I want to give you a little bit of history here. Now that we do have an idea of what motivational interviewing is and how it can be used, where did it come from? Understanding its origins always helps me connect the pieces together. Many interventions are developed from theory and tested over time. But with motivational interviewing, it was developed differently. In the early 1970s, psychologist Dr. Miller here began working with patients struggling with alcohol use. Rather than confronting or directing them, he used a client-centered approach influenced by Carl Rogers, who I mentioned earlier. And he describes simply that listening to them with appropriate levels of empathy and inviting patients to share their experiences, goals, and concerns. And to his surprise, patients responded openly and honestly. This contrasted sharply with the common belief at that time, where he was told that people who had alcohol problems were defensive or incapable of seeing reality. And he was like, no, these are not who I'm working with. And he found that later through the research and that patients reduced their drinking more successfully when therapists demonstrated higher levels of empathy. And this became the core foundation of motivational interviewing, which is empathy. It just kind of, everything just fell into his lap. And now, for well over 50 years, motivational interviewing is key in many components of just working and learning from others. So I've talked to you about why it matters. Now let's go into the how. Because knowing empathy is important in one thing, it's actually using it in a real conversation is where it can become tricky. So this is where motivational interviewing does come into play. So this gives us our 4 core principles that guide us on how we are going to show up in our conversations. And we're going to break each one down. And the first one is expressing empathy. At its core, this is about understanding someone's perspective without judgment. We don't want to fix or jump in with solutions. We just really want to try and understand where they are coming from. In leadership, this can show up in very practical ways. Things like just acknowledging frustrations around shifting deadlines, changing priorities, or unclear expectations. Because as we know, this happens a lot in the work that we do. So for instance, when there is that last minute change, we can say something like, I can imagine that this change may have felt overwhelming. How can I support you? Or we can even just say, let's figure out together how to make it more manageable. This small shift changes the conversation. It acknowledges their experience, it can create safety, and it opens doors for real dialogue. And then this is also when people feel understood. That's when they are more willing to engage, adapt, and move forward because it's that collaborative process. It's that partnership. Then the second principle is develop discrepancy. This is about helping someone see the gap between where they are right now and where they want to be. It's this here to there. So again, this goal is not to point out to someone, but it's there to help them discover for themselves. Because when individuals recognize the gap between where they're at and where they want to be, this is where it's creating real motivation for any change in behavior, for example. This often shows up as a disconnect between intentions and actions. Someone might want to grow as a leader. They want to take more ownership or be seen as reliable, but their current behavior is not fully aligning with that. So we just want to help individuals from where they're at and where they want to be. The next is rolling with resistance. As leaders, we sometimes can hear resistance and we may want to explain more. We want to justify the decision. We want to convince. Or as I did with my sister, I lost my why. So I put on my blinders and I put on my earmuffs. That wall, that everything was there. I stopped hearing. Instead, it's not something we want to overcome. It's something that we want to understand. It's the information. So in organizations, resistance often shows up when there is some sort of change. Or change, as we know, change is hard. It's that unknown. So if we respond by saying, or better yet, telling, that is what the data says, we need to move forward, we're more likely to get some sort of resistance, not less. So instead, we can pause and get curious. We can shift from pushing or telling to more of exploring. For instance, you seem unsure about this new protocol. What is your biggest concern? We're not dismissing, we're just creating space for them to share what's underneath that resistance. Because resistance is rarely about the surface issue, it's about uncertainty, workload, trust, or even past experiences. So when people feel heard, that resistance often softens on its own. So instead of fighting resistance, we work with it. And that's what makes real progress possible. That's how we could start to move forward. We want, instead of wrestling, we want to make it a dance. Think of the rumba or something. Boom, boom, boom. And then support self-efficacy. This is really about helping believe that they can do it. Because even if someone understands the situation, and even if they see a gap, if they don't believe that they are capable of making a change or being able to move forward, nothing happens. So our role shifts from directing to empowering. Be that gold star. Be the cheerleader. If you can jump up right now, jump up for them. Give them the recognition that they deserve. In an organizational environment, we invite the team to be a part of the solution. We can ask them, what do you think that would work here? What approach makes the most sense to you? And we can reinforce what they've already done. Reminding someone of their past success is huge because it reconnects them to their own capability. Because when people believe in their ability to contribute, they step up, take initiative, and they want to follow through. So this principle is really about one thing, helping people see that they're not just part of a project, that they are capable of driving it forward. They are that gold star. So now that we've walked through the core principles, let's go over rule, the guiding lights. Because in real conversations, especially when we're under pressure, we are not always thinking, am I expressing empathy? Am I developing a discrepancy here? We need something sometimes a bit simpler, and that is where rule comes in. It's a quick way to guide how we show up in conversations. First, we want to resist the writing reflex. This can be hard because sometimes it's a natural instinct that we want to fix a problem. We want to jump in with, here's what we need to do. When do we need to do that too quickly? Type of thing. When we do things too quickly, we can shut that other person down from their thinking when they're starting to do something and we try to fix it. So instead, we just pause, or we can be invited into the conversation because all of us are experts here in the work that we do. So what we can ask, for instance, instead of trying to fix it, you can mention, hey, I have an idea. Can I share it with you? So now we're being invited into the conversation. Second, understand motivations. Instead of assuming what's driving someone, we get curious. What matters to them? What are they trying to achieve? What's influencing how they are showing up? Because without understanding their motivation, we're just guessing. And then also listen. Listen not to just respond, but to actually understand. This is where we pick up on what's truly being said. Listening fills in gaps. And finally, empowerment. We bring people into the solution. We don't just give answers, we partner with them. What do you think would work best here? Because that's what creates ownership. So if you remember nothing else from this section, remember this. Don't fix right away. Get curious and listen deeply, and this will bring people into the solution. And that's truly what rule is. And that's how motivational interviewing is how we can show up in real conversations. So we've talked about the mindset with rule. So let's get into some actual tools. What this sounds like in real conversations. And this is where OARS comes in, the acronym OARS. You may see it in literature as EARS. The E is for elaboration. Here, O is for open-ended questions. These are the core communication skills: open-ended, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarization. And the best part is you can use this in any setting, personal or professional. And this is what's bringing that human-centered element back into the conversation. So we're going to go through each one. So open-ended questions tend to be the what and how questions. We want to avoid the binary responses, those yes and no. So I have a question for all of you. And I know you have the answer. If you want, you can throw it in the chat or just say it out loud. I can't hear you, but I know what your answer is going to be. How was school today? Yep. I know what you're all saying. I know what you're all saying. May not be fine. It might just be good. So I asked a what or a how question, right? And I got a one word response. So if this happens, I'm going to go back to, going back to school. So, well, what was fine about school today? Okay. You and Sally went and played at recess? Okay. What did you do at recess today? Oh my goodness, you guys played tetherball, foursquare, tag. I'm totally dating myself. I don't know if any of these things still exist, like foursquare and tetherball. Oh, that is so cool, you guys. Oh, I love it. How is Sally doing? So what I'm doing here is just like building off of what was already stated. So I know I went, back to school, but sometimes we do get those yes or no, those binary one word answers, but we just want to ask more questions, those what and the how, and get excited for the answers that they give. And the goal here is to move away from those yes and no questions and want people to be invited and reflect and share more. And people do really enjoy talking about themselves. They truly do. You want to hear more about what I have to say? Yes, let me tell you more. So things that we can ask, we want to avoid, I'm going to rewind a second, and we want to avoid those one word questions overall. So for instance, are you on track? We could get a response like yes or no, but that isn't telling us as much as if we asked a what and a how question. We want to explore and uncover really what is going on. So, for instance, what do you think is getting in the way right now? What challenges are you seeing from your perspective? Again, what or how questions. And if you are stumped on a what or how question, you're like, I cannot think of any more, powerful statement, tell me more. Now, you're just, tell me more about what's going on. Tell me. And then words will start coming out. Our next are affirmations. Sometimes this can feel a little bit forced or even unnecessary, but in motivational interviewing, affirmations are about giving, are not about giving generic praise. It's more about them being recognized for something that is real and specific, that someone is really doing something well. And this matters more than we think. Because in the workplace, especially if we go back to that fast paced, high pressure work that we all do, people tend to hear more about what's not working than what is working. And over time, this can impact our confidence, our engagement, and our why, that motivation. So affirmations can help rebalance that. They reinforce effort, strengths, and behaviors that we do want to see more of. So instead of saying something that is vague, like good job, we can get more specific. You showed a lot of initiative in resolving that issue. That really helped the team move forward. Or I appreciate how you stayed flexible during this last minute change. This made a huge difference. So now we're not just being nice, we are reinforcing behavior. And that's key. What gets recognized tends to get repeated. So affirmations are not just fluff. They are a strategic way to build confidence, increase engagement, and guide behavior in that positive direction that we want to see. And then there's reflective listening. Most of us, I don't want to say most of us, there's many that most listen to respond, or they listen to respond. We could be thinking, what should I say next? How do I solve this? But we want to use reflective listening. It is different. It's about listening to understand and then showing that understanding back to that person, even going back to that person that makes you feel heard and understood. They're listening to you. So in reflective listening, it's not about just repeating word for word of what someone says, but it's capturing the meaning and the emotion behind what they are saying. This is powerful because when people feel heard, they open up more. They share more context, more detail, more of what's really going on. So remember in the beginning, again, just bringing it back to you. You felt heard and understood, and you share more with that person. Also, reflective listening can help us catch any misunderstandings early. It reduces conflict and it does build trust much faster. Reflective listening is what turns a conversation from transactional into meaningful. So instead of jumping in with a solution, we stop and reflect. It shows that we are truly listening and we can ask questions or make little snippet statements, such as it sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed when the current workload, or you're concerned that we're moving too fast and it might be impacting your quality. Did I understand that correctly? So again, it's not something, excuse me. So again, it's about truly being heard. It's creating that understanding. It's what drives better conversations and better outcomes. And it reduces any biases or judgments that one may have, because we all have biases and judgments. But when we learn more about others and what is going on, those reduce. And now summarizing. Now, this is the final skill, and this is where everything comes together, like we are wrapping up a present with a beautiful red bow. Or for those of us that write all of the time, it's that conclusionary paragraph. So with our open-ended questions, that starts the conversation and we are listening to understand, and then we're summarizing, and that's bringing everything into focus. It's how we make sure everyone is aligned before we're able to move forward. This is incredibly valuable because misalignment is one of the biggest sources of delays, rework, and frustrations. And often it's not because people disagree, it could be because they understood things differently. So summarizing helps us prevent that. It allows us to pull everything together, our key points, confirm shared understanding, clarify next steps, and due dates. So instead of assuming, everyone is on the same page and we pause and say, let me summarize what I'm hearing. Or, so far we have agreed that you will lead the question and answer rollout, and we'll meet next week to review results, for instance. So now we're just not closing the conversation, we are strengthening it. Because when people hear their thoughts reflected back clearly and they agree with it, that's alignment. And alignment is what allows us to move forward with confidence as a team. So I just want to apply everything that I've been talking about. Let's bring this into some common workplace encounters. So resistance to change. And so that's one of our challenges. And we're going to kind of go through a motivational interviewing approach to resistance. Because as we know, change is constant in the work that we do. There could be new tools, new team structures, evolving goals. And again, resistance is not often about the change itself, but about the fear of losing control or that unknowing of the expectations. So what we would want to do is roll with resistance rather than confront it. And we can do this through expressing empathy as well to validate such concerns. So instead of saying something, we have to do it this way, we can try, I get that switching platforms feel like starting over. What's the biggest concern for you with this change that we are going through? That's one way of just rephrasing what is happening. Also, missed deadlines is something that we've all potentially experienced throughout our career, whether it's ourselves or with our team members. So a lot of times when timelines slip, our instinct may be to confront the issue directly, or we've experienced that from somebody. But instead, we want to use motivational interviewing because it encourages us to explore the why behind that missed deadline. So we can develop a discrepancy between what was committed and what happened. And we can also affirm because of their previous progress or effort that they've done in the past. So for instance, you have always met deliverables in the past. What changed this time? Or how does this delay affect your goals from moving forward in the process? So we're exploring on what happened rather than doing any sort of blame. We want to learn from them. Low engagement is another challenge that is often faced in organizations. And we want to use self-efficacy, be their cheerleader and ask those what and those how questions. So low engagement might be someone may show up at being very quiet at a meeting. And so you're wanting to learn what is happening. So what would make this project more interesting for you? Asking that question. What do you see as your most valuable contribution here? Explore their ideas. Another example of a challenge is team conflict. Miscommunication and clashing work styles do happen. Motivational interviewing doesn't solve the conflict between people, but it does help create space for better understanding. So something we can use is reflective listening to show that understanding of each viewpoint, and summarization to learn more about the shared values or goals and to refocus. So what I'm hearing is that both of you care about hitting the quality bar, but have different views on how to get there. Let's talk through it. And a final challenge that I'll go over is ambiguity or confusion. Sometimes silence or hesitation comes from people not fully understanding what's expected. I'm guilty of that. I will admit it. But they don't always feel safe to say something, right? So using motivational interviewing, we can ask open-ended questions to uncover that unspoken confusion, clarify direction, and summarize shared understanding. So for instance, we can ask, what would help make your priorities clear for this sprint if we were in project management? Let me summarize what I think we agreed on. Tell me if I missed anything. So now we're pulling out, learning from them what they know. And a lot of times, guilty, as I said, we know more than what we think we do. We just need that time and space to be able to share. All right, I have another activity because I want to apply everything that we've talked about. I've shared with you in regard to motivational interviewing. So this is our activity, poll everywhere again. Um, this is the QR code. The link is being put in the chat. And I will have to open it up in a second. But you are a leader working with a team member who is usually reliable. Their work is submitted on time and they rock. And they never skip a beat. But over the past two meeting updates, they have missed a few deadlines and seem to be withdrawn in meetings. You approach them in a one-on-one to check in. And they tell you, I just don't see the point of giving updates anymore. Things keep on changing and no one sticks to the plan anyway. How would you respond using MI? It could be a question or a statement. And I'll give, a couple more seconds to scan that QR code or click on that link. And we'll go here, activate, and present. I love this. Yes. The tell me mores. Giving that understanding of this sounds frustrating. And just also expressing, I understand that you feel frustrated. I hear you. And I love, yes, said it a couple of times. Can you tell me more? What things keep changing that you find difficult? Yes. Love it. Love it. Everyone is sharing that they heard this team member and you're asking for more details. Yes. So what I read here from this scenario is that reflective listening and empathy, because majority of you, based on your responses, shared that you heard them and their feeling of being frustrated. Also, some things that we can do that I may have missed in the example is affirming past strengths. For instance, you've always been consistent and that has not gone unnoticed. Tell me what is going on differently, which we did see that I read out loud. And when we're doing this, we're evoking We're pulling out information of that point. I don't see why I should do this anymore. Now we want to hear from them their why and how we can turn that around. And we're exploring what is going on inside of them. And simultaneously, we want to empower the work that they have done in the past. Love it, you everyone. Love it. So, some key takeaways uh, for today is I really want us to understand that real power of motivational interviewing for us, all of us as leaders or aspiring leaders, or even at home, is how motivational interviewing it transforms routine interactions into opportunities to motivate, build trust, and learn more. So when we're using just a few of the OARS techniques consistently, we can shift how people respond to feedback, deadlines, and change. These are not just tools about fixing people, right? They're about helping them tap into their own why, their own capacity. And you can start really small and just try an open-ended question or a reflective statement in your next stand-up or one-on-one and see what happens. Further, I want to share, for some of us, we have a natural ability to have these conversations, no problem whatsoever. And then the rest of us, as I'm pointing to myself, it does take practice, and that is okay. It will become more natural. And I share this because at the very beginning of our conversation here, I mentioned to you that I have over 19 years of child welfare experience. And so I'm going to conclude with this story from when I started in my career several decades ago. But when I started working in child welfare for the Department of Child Safety here in Arizona, and at the time it was Child Protective Services. I was working in the field for a couple of years, and I have a natural ability to talk to people. I love being social. I had no problem with that. And when I started in my career, I was able to talk to families, attorneys, providers, children, no problem. Well, I was promoted to be an investigator. And I did do my training and shadowed my colleagues. And now it was time to go on a case, my own case, to investigate an allegation of neglect. And so my supervisor, he handed it to me just on a piece of paper. And so I went and read through the allegations. I'm like, okay, I got this. Fortunately, my supervisor went with me, thankfully. And we knocked on the door. The mom was expecting us because the night before was an incident of neglect for a domestic violence in which the children were present. So she was expecting us to come out that next day. And she invited us in and told us to go ahead and have a seat. And I did. And I'm like, all right, I got this. Well, I started asking questions. I did okay doing the demographic background, making sure this is who I'm talking to. And now it was time for me to learn about her. What happened last night? What was to happen? And I just stared. I was like a deer in the headlights. I went, Fortunately, my supervisor was there, and then he just came in and just started talking to her about what happened, where she was in her past, what are her goals in the future. And it turned into this beautiful, harmonious dance of learning about her children, her why, her motivation. And she figured out just on her own her motivation with us chiming in, or my supervisor chiming in as needed. what services she needed to be successful. We only had to offer one resource, and at the time was cell phones. Cell phones were around, they just weren't, not everyone had one. So we were able to provide emergency phones. Um, and that's all we had to provide. She had her own, her why was there. And I can share after that, we did not, as far as I know, received another case on her or her family because this was about her and her why. And so I share this with you, even though I've been doing this for like a long time. It did take me some time just to learn more about people and to ask those what and the how questions. So if you stumble a little bit, that's okay because you will eventually learn to have those conversations. It'll just become natural for you. And you'll learn so much about your peers, your team members through conversations to uplift what they want to do and how to everybody work together and everyone's common goal and vision to be met. One last thing before we open up for questions, I want you to pull out that piece of paper that you used regarding your why you are a leader, and how motivational interviewing can influence your relationships and conversations with your peers or team members. What information, now that I've hung out with you for a little bit, what can you add to that piece of paper? How can using MI impact the work that you do?
Are we good to switch
We
over to Q&A?
we definitely are. I just wanted to
Okay.
give that, I wanted to do the awkward silence. Come on.
Well, thank you so very much, Kerri, for such a thoughtful and really helpful presentation, especially for the scripts. I know that a lot of people in the comments were really found that really helpful. So we'll go ahead and take time for some questions. We do have some questions in the Q&A box. And if you have any questions, be sure to type them into the Q&A box, and I'll read them as they came in. So for our first question, how do you respond to people whose why is paycheck?
That is a really difficult one because I think it also is contingent on what the organization uh, is based on their on pay, but we can learn a little bit more asking those what and the how questions as it relates to what is their concern regarding their paycheck. And also, maybe it could definitely be, deductions. And then we can assist with finding resources to answer some of those questions. It could also lead to develop professional development goals and how they are able to spread their wings and grow within this organization or other opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, next question is amplifying the staff goal is quote unquote pay the bills, folks who do a good job but whose personal identity and goals lie outside the workplace. Specifically, how can we square this when we're in an institution that actively rewards drive and the appearance of motivation over consistent quality of work?
Okay. Um, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So amplifying the staff goal is to quote unquote pay the bills, folks who do a good job, but whose personal identity and goals lie outside the workplace. Specifically, how can we square this when we're in an institution that actively rewards drive and the appearance of motivation over consistent quality of work?
Well, that is a good one. So that's the reason why I had to ask to hear it twice. Um, sounds like there's a couple of parts in this question. Is individuals, um, they identify outside of the workplace. I'm going to tackle that part and see, you know, in regard to what they identify with outside the work, is how can we potentially bring it in to the workplace? What do they enjoy doing? What are their, those goals and interests into um, into the work here where we're at? And I want to give an example again about me. Is I shared with you that organizational psychology is my passion, and I work in data science and analytics. So what I have done in a component, not only looking at the data science component and behavioral health portions and some of my interests in engaging students, faculty, and staff, but I've also brought it into a component into my organization itself of how we can create potentially a workshop in utilizing a training for leaders and aspiring leaders in leadership styles, motivational interviewing, and self-care techniques. So I'm bringing a passion outside of my normal job title, but back into something that gets me an additional excitement to go to work. And so that is one way to answer that first part of the question. And now I'm trying to find the question again because we had some additional and it popped away. I was able to open it.
Oh, it should be under the answered section.
Oh, thank you. That's why it disappeared. I'm like, where did it go? So that's, one component. And then the other part is again, just learning about what that second part of the question, what drives the appearance of motivation over consistent quality of work, is learning more about who they are and what they want to do. So it shows that what they are doing is important, not only to the organization, but to their unit itself. We want to definitely inquire their value and their why.
I think we have time for one more
Okay.
question very quickly.
Okay.
In reply to employees who say that they want to be leaders, but their behaviors don't align. If this goes on for years, but they still aren't changing, then what? When does this become a performance problem? And there's directly another question underneath. Any suggestions for how to delicately help them develop discrepancy in this area?
Regarding performance problem, I want to answer that part first. Um, Work with HR with that component to learn some of the legality and the policies of the institution. But as it goes, that discrepancy of where they're at and where they want to be, start having those deeper conversations. You've shared with me that you wanted to go into a leadership role. How can I help you get there? What are your goals? What do you believe can get you there? And start talking about like different resources that are there based on what they tell you. So now you're just pulling information out of them and then chiming in as needed instead of telling someone what to do when the earmuffs and blinders. I have some ideas. Can I share it with you? That's what we can do. It's a
Uh,
lot of the what in the house.
We have so many amazing questions in the Q&A, but unfortunately, we don't have time to address them. You do have Kerri's contact
Yes.
information, so feel free to reach out to them. But once again, thank you again, Kerri, for answering those questions and for a great and really helpful presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And before we close the session, I would like to point out the evaluation survey that's available for you to complete. I'm certain the presenters would very much appreciate your feedback. You can also find the link in the evaluation in Sketch. It's labeled session evaluation form, and it is directly below the session description. So thank you all for attending, and we really hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great Wednesday.